This panel is moderated by Chantel Costa. She is the Director of Development of DAIA. So please put your hands together for Chantel and also our great panelists. I'm going to let the video do justice. So please give them a round of applause. Welcome our speakers. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So, just want to start off with thanking the audience for coming to a panel about AI and blockchain. So, obviously, no tech conference is complete without speaking about the most emerging and hottest technologies. And this topic, our panel, is going to cover why combining AI and blockchain makes sense, why it doesn't, what's its current use cases and applications right now, where it's going in the future, if there is a future. So we're going to have a lot of different opinions. And I'm actually very excited for all our panelists because each and every one of these individuals is an expert in their own right. So you guys are going to be in for a treat. And I'm just going to give a brief bio of each one here because a title does not do any of them justice. They have done so much. In fact, when I asked them for 3 to 4 sentences of their bio, I got 4 pages. So let me start off with David Blake, who is founder and CEO at Greater China Capital, amongst many other titles, including at SingularityNET. At Greater China Capital Financial, David focuses on regenerative medicine projects. Recently, he brought his skill set into AI ecosystems, blockchain projects, robotics, with a focus on fintech and the regenerative model sector. David has also casually authored 5 books and contributed articles to over 50 publications worldwide. Also, please welcome Chirdeep Chhabra, founder of Ocean Protocol, former CEO at Dext. He is a serial entrepreneur with over 20 years experience in commercializing technologies in AI, big data, distributed systems, mobile ad hoc networks, and most recently in blockchain technologies. In 2017, Chirdeep started Ocean Protocol, a decentralized data exchange protocol that unlocks data for AI. We also have Sirucek, co-founder and CEO of DocDoc. He is an investor and entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience, now leading DocDoc, the world's first patient intelligence company. Cole has received numerous recognitions, which include Asia's 100 Greatest Leaders, the 30 Most Inspiring Entrepreneurs of Asia, and the 30 Best Entrepreneurs to Look For in 2018, as well as Overall Generally Great Person. I added that last one. Last but not least, you may recognize this face right here from just a few minutes ago. Let's welcome Dr. Ben Goertzel again on stage. He is CEO at SingularityNET and Chief Scientist at Hanson Robotics. He is one of the world's foremost experts in artificial general intelligence. Dr. Goertzel has decades of experience applying AI to practical problems, ranging from natural processing to robotics and national security. He is also the author of 20 books, 140 plus research papers, and a bunch of other things. Okay, so thank you to all our panelists for being here. I'm just going to jump right into it. So blockchain and AI affect data in different ways, and joining them together seems like it makes sense. Because AI is argued to be capable of enhancing blockchain's underlying architecture, and vice versa, blockchain is argued to boost AI's potential. Now, this can be debated. We're going to start off with Chirdeep. Can you actually explain to us why bother combining these 2 disruptive technologies? What's the fuss about AI and blockchain together? What's its combined potential, if there is any?
Quite a broad thing there, but the way I look at the world is, as we have started going digital, what we have actually ended up with is huge, data sets, mostly in silos. And what really drives AI is data. Now, from our point of view, when I started Ocean, the basic point was we have these silos which are extremely closed, which we do not have access to, where there is no level playing field. Now, if you really go back to what exactly a blockchain really is, it's essentially a database. What do you put in a database? Data, right? Now, it has some interesting properties. What we actually observed there is, while you have these data sets that are actually completely disparate, not accessible, which are actually at the minute not real assets. Because the way our internet really functions and works is I can make infinite copies of data. If I make infinite, I can make infinite copies of any data out there. If I do that, that is not really an asset. Now, that is where blockchain kicks in, which actually converts your data into a real asset. If I give you one Bitcoin, I have one less and you have one more. It's essentially some form of data, right? Now, if I create this access layer on top of data, which actually allows you to have a kind of access control to it, which is decentralized, that actually really changes things. And that is where, like what Ben mentioned just a few minutes ago, when you actually have a mechanism where there is no, where you can actually create mechanisms of various people from across the globe, be able to create models which actually can work together to solve problems. For that, you need an underlying data to actually train those models. So you need that data, you need that access layer, which is essentially blockchain. And then you have this entire supply chain that you need to create on top of it to move from data to insight to some kind of predictive metrics to kind of deploying that data to actually then getting the output that you really want. And for all of that, you need various kinds of services that need to be built on top of it. You need that entire invocable service layer. And part of that is also this AI marketplace that Singularity has been, we're really proud to be, working together on things like that. So I think what blockchain and AI really come together because what the underlying thing is really is all about data and enabling that data access. And blockchain kind of enables that access layer to actually exist, converting both data and these AI models to actually become assets so that you can actually license them in the right way. You can trade with them without anybody centrally stopping you from doing that. And of course, cooperation also happens in due process. And that cooperation is what leads to kinds of AGI and so on that Ben was talking about.
So you have the data, you have the AI algorithms, and you have the processing power. And ultimately, we need ways to provide every one of these that are decentralized and democratically controlled. What I loved about Ocean Protocol is that provides a very clear and scalable and elegant way of addressing decentralized data storage, access, and manipulation. SingularityNET, we focus on the algorithm side, and there are other projects focusing on the processing power side. And you need all of these as well as you need tools living a little higher up in the stack, applying this data and processing power and algorithms to specific domains, such as in the medical area, as these two guys are doing.
So it's also important to add to that. So if you really look at what Turing really said, that there's no difference between data and program or code. So essentially what we are really talking about is not necessarily AI and blockchain, but actually data and blockchain, because AI in its form, if you really ask Turing, will tell you it's code. That code is essentially data.
Yeah. So essentially, like what we can take from this is data is the future. Data is what's important here and what's at stake here. And obviously, our personal data is actually the most valuable thing we have, as everything is slowly being automated. Our personal data will eventually become our most lucrative, most valuable asset. And interestingly, for many years, the traditional formula for services is give us your data for free and we'll give you this service. However, David, as data is becoming more and more valuable personally for each one of us, will this formula stay the same or will it be replaced?
Well, I'd like to take a step back.
Is your mic working?
Your microphone's not working.
Hello, David.
Can we fix David's
Or
microphone?
can we just get a handheld microphone for him?
Mine's not working either. Hello? I can hear you.
Okay, so 2 of our panelists' microphones aren't working.
That's okay, we didn't have anything to say.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can impersonate David effectively. Yeah.
Can we have 2, or you can share it amongst
So
yourselves?
Can you guys hear me?
David.
No, yours isn't working either.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Does that work?
Yes.
Okay,
Awesome.
great. Well, we look at it from a different perspective at Rejuve because we're dealing with how to solve the problem of death, and then how we bring AI and blockchain into that. So at the high level, we're looking at how to halt aging, reverse aging, and create a new species. And at the lower level, we're figuring out how does AI fit in with that, and how does blockchain fit in with that. And basically, I think that from the AI perspective, we look at AI as the solution to anti-aging and possibly involuntary death. And the way that will work is we will take we will use AI to enhance research and develop new treatments and change the way the medical world works. The blockchain component of that will be the introduction of the RJV coin, and to create sort of like the Bitcoin for the medical world. And of course, we all know how important blockchain was to creation of Bitcoin. So we're taking all of these elements into creating this medical vision, which is hopefully leading us to a period of time which will allow us to live a longer, healthier lifespan, and maybe 120, 160 years. And at one point when AGI kicks in and the singularity moment comes, when we create this new species of man and machine, we will then be living forever.
Yeah, I think a key point with Rejuve, the project you're leading, I guess a key point is that right now, most medical research is driven by data that's contributed, in essence, for free by random people around the world when they go to the hospital or when they get a test done or something, right? So we give data about our bodies, then it's analyzed by pharmaceutical companies and hospitals to derive therapies, which then shareholders of those companies make money from, and government agencies decide who gets to benefit from these therapies, right? And I think by creating a sort of decentralized tokenomic ecosystem, you can make it so when you contribute some data into your Rejuve data wallet secured by your Rejuve ID, when you upload your medical data into your data wallet, right, then you can track and control what that data is used for. If that's used to feed into an AI that discovers a new therapy, if that new therapy makes a lot of money, you should get a little piece of that. But just as importantly, you should have some say over what it's used for, and you should have access to that therapy, right? So the agency over the therapies discovered by the AI on people's data should go, at least in substantial part, to the people who contributed that data. And this is a problem that a tokenomic ecosystem, founded on blockchain underneath, is well suited to solve, which has acute need for the type of technologies Ocean Protocol has been developing, because these are, in some cases, quite large medical data sets that need to be secured, need to be analyzed using multi-party computing and all sorts of fancy encryption tricks. And in the end, this ties into what Cole is working on as well in a different part of the equation.
Yeah, and that actually, going off of like that theme of like democracy and tokenomics that you're kind of discussing and touching upon, Ben, Cole, what do you think? What do you see as the importance of blockchain tokenomics to the creation of a more effective and more democratic medical system?
Well,
a couple of different things. I want to take this question a different direction.
Go ahead.
We were talking about questions earlier, and she's like, "Don't take it a different direction." You know, at a very high level, I find these blockchain conferences fascinating because some of the ideas, like what you were talking about around data and programming, and how they're at their intrinsic level really the same thing. Man, that is a really deep concept that requires a tremendous amount of understanding to pick up on it, right? There's a lot there, right? That goes over the head of almost
It's
everyone.
all just sequences of bits, Cole.
Ones and zeros. It's almost a holographic universe,
Or
right?
they're qubits. They're not just ones and zeros.
But so I come to these conferences and I'm fascinated by the sophistication and of certain kind of pockets, and then I'm fascinated by the amount of bullshit that's in between those pockets, right? Because it's really like there's just these giant mountains of both of them everywhere. And so the way I think this evolves, I think it's inevitable that data, the value associated with data more closely aligns with that data. It's a foregone conclusion. It will be what Google becomes, but not from Google. Like Google is the standard oil of today for data. And you go to these private equity conferences and all these like old guys that make a ton of money are like, now data's the new oil. Well, no shit, that was been true for a long time. And so we're at the peak data centralized phase of the universe. And so what's gonna move, where the market moves from there is more closely aligning your data with who you are. And the person that produces the data more directly gets value from that. And so we're, I think, peak centralized data. And so that's really good for guys like you, both of you, because you're betting on the decentralization of data. But I think as it applies to medicine, the reason we're at peak data centralization is because you can't build or it's incredibly complicated. So if you think about the way you build any good digital product, you start with Post-it notes on a whiteboard. And then you build the workflow and you run it a few thousand times and you optimize it. And then you centralize and build it in HTML or some other simple language. And then after you do that and you get it running really well, then you can really begin to think about decentralizing it into a multi-node ecosystem. Because that's like much, much harder than building it in a centralized way. So we're at this point in centralizing data where there's enough understanding of this kind of piracy economy that's come from Facebook, that's come from Google, that's kind of evolving everywhere, that you can begin to think about decentralizing it in a practical, realistic sense. Now, we're not there in healthcare. I'd like us to be there, but we're not. So we're just starting to begin to build centralized knowledge architectures that allow you to store doctor data. We're just starting to build electronic medical records that are interoperable. 5 years from now, all that data will be centralized, and there'll be the beginnings of centralized architectures that can begin to steal that data for nefarious ends like Google does. After that's happened, you can decentralize it.
Well, the thing is, Cole, that's interesting, but I don't think that's intrinsic. I think that's not a fact of the way society...
No, yes, Ben, everything I say is true for sure, always.
Well, yeah, maybe,
of course you're right, it's just an opinion.
No, that's not what I meant. What I meant was you are right about the way things work in the world right now, but the reason centralized systems are so much easier to come by than decentralized ones is mostly because that's how the social and institutional and economic structures are built right now. Like, if you look at medical data, actually it's decentralized by nature. It's contained in all these people scattered all around the world. Like, there's nothing natural about centralizing it in one place. Actually, I mean, we have people gathering medical data in clinics decentralized all over, holding these objects decentralized all over. So, I mean, a decentralized way of storing and managing the data, in a sense, is more natural than centralizing it.
I agree with you.
It's not the way the medical industry in particular works. So I think on the software level, with things like Ocean or SingularityNET or Toda, a whole bunch of other projects, we're now at the point where we have fairly nice polished APIs. So from a software developer's point of view, you can actually build something using decentralized tools, and it's only modestly more annoying than building it using centralized tools. And soon it will be not any more difficult or cumbersome. But medicine, yeah, you have other problems, right? Because, I mean, you have legal regulations, and you have these entrenched institutions which are centralized by nature. And I think that's perhaps the bigger challenge to overcome than the technical ones.
It's for sure the bigger challenge. And I agree with you, by the way. So, okay, so maybe I need to be more clear about medicine. I don't mean that what you're getting out of your iPhone or a wearable, that stuff, or a test that you run yourself, that stuff could be decentralized today. And in fact, it's more decentralization. It makes more sense.
The question is, why isn't the DNA test just like you spit in a tube, you mail it somewhere, and then that's just put into your secure data wallet, secured by your Rejuve ID, or put in Ocean Protocol or something like that. There's no, because the lab that does that testing is just its own startup entity somewhere anyway, right? So there's nothing in that ecosystem that actually requires centralization, right? It's just the way things happen to work right now.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. There's no inherent reason why it's not. It's building the knowledge architecture that takes your entire medical record at a condition or procedure level, takes all of the tests that you're running in all of the labs, and getting them to put that in a digital way, even in a cloud as a start. So there's, I agree 100% with what you're saying, in the same way that there's that, from a theoretical level. From a practical level, I think that money was a pretty well understood concept before Bitcoin came out. And the piracy economy is a pretty well understood economy now, and that's why it's really ready for decentralization. Medical IT and building a patient profile that aggregates everything you do from your MRIs to what you collect on your phones, these pieces are just starting to be digitized. And I think they're going to be centralized before they're decentralized.
So how have you seen these challenges?
I think Chirdeep has a comment.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there are a number of points I want to kind of pick on. The first one actually is, let's talk about what Google did with DeepMind, where they actually got these 4.5 million retina scans from one hospital. Now, the reality is that that is the first time they actually got that information, and they try to train a model to actually understand whether or not, you know, what you would find there is either a cancer or a tumor or whatever else, right? Now, the thing is, they backed down from that one because while those scans, now, I mean, what you're really talking about is first you have to digitize, and to digitize, you first need to centralize, and then you go on to decentralization. What my contention there is, I think there isn't enough data available for healthcare for various things, which is essentially with only one organization. I'll give you an example. One of the things that we worked on was around Parkinson's disease. We worked with a company that needed 10,000 patients' data. Now, there was no way that you would have 10,000 patients' data with one insurance company or one hospital. So we had to kind of collaborate with 5 different hospitals across the globe. And there we had to get the model to travel to the data, but make sure that that data was prepared and labeled in the same way, right? Now, essentially, those are all pockets of centralization still. So in that sense, you're not wrong. But in the sense that you actually have model traveling to the data and actually getting trained, in that sense, Ben is also not wrong, right? So I think we have, what ended up with that project that DeepMind from Google actually did with those retina scans was, there was a question that if it is my scan, have I given specific access for this purpose? And if so, what is it going to be used for? Who touched the data? What did they touch it for? What will be the end result? So we just want to make sure that that entire chain is complete. So I would actually love for my data to be used for medical science, but not necessarily for, let us say, a pharmaceutical company to actually
Right.
develop something where they do not give me back something because I'm
Right.
not one of their shareholders.
Who owns the data is obviously an important question.
And you might not be able to use that therapy. You won't get into the
Yeah.
early stage clinical trial. I mean, you or your mom could have a problem that needs the therapy derived from study of your eyes,
Yeah.
but you have no particular access to that therapy.
So kind of what I'm saying here is that the moment of mass adoption is when Epic Systems has been forced, or any of the major electronic medical records. So first, they've been ubiquitously adopted across every major hospital system, and that's kind of starting to happen in the US and Europe. It's kind of done. Now in Asia, it's starting to really happen. So that's happened. Then they're forced by regulatory to make that interoperable.
Yeah.
Right? Because right now, good luck getting those guys to unlock anything. Like you're having to go to the hospital and really negotiate. Once that happens, I think what you're talking about is the foregone conclusion. And look, you want to be 3 years early, because it takes 3 years to build anything of significance. So you want to be 3-4 years early. I think this is right. I think you're not necessarily in the wrong time, but there's a lot of underlying knowledge architecture that you have to put together to be able to say, okay, I want clean Parkinson's data from a system. There's a lot, like you're doing a lot of it in a very manual way right now. You're having to go out and collect it at hospitals and then tag it and make sure. And I think there's a lot of really good uses for that. And I think you can build a hell of a good business there, because this is one of the best applications of AI.
Right.
Machine learning, I'll shut up.
No worries. Let's get out of the nitty-gritty of current applications, weaknesses, what's happening right now. Let's go into the future, what the potential of AI and blockchain is. So David, this is questions directed to you. What are some long-nurtured science fictional dreams that are becoming a reality? Obviously, David has a very interesting background in regenerative health and immortality. So please.
He's actually the first immortal.
He's immortal
Ben.
himself, yes.
Thanks to Ben.
Yesterday I was introduced David saying that he was 160 years old.
Yes.
By much
200.
But on his planet, 1 year is 100 Earth years, so that's actually really old by Earth standards. Yeah.
Well, that's a really good question. But I think that the answer to that question is going to come in the next, quicker than we think, in the next 20, 30, 40 years. And it all revolves around, the technologies that we're talking about today. And Ben has led this way with the AGI movement, which I think is going to be essential to that. So when I started to understand more about this, I said, oh, well, I've got to start to read all these books by Kurzweil and Bostrom and try to understand what the situation is going to be. And it quickly became clear that it is true that we could live for significantly longer periods, and maybe at one point 400 or 500 years, but for that to happen, some very serious technological changes are going to come into play. And one of those is going to be the interaction of our bodies with nanobots and different robotic elements and all of that. And that's where health is going to be heading. So when it all dovetails together into AI, blockchain, robotics, and all the things that we've got.
Nanotech, quantum
IoT.
computing.
What are we going to be? We're going to be a much different species, I think. And whether it happens, we look at it, whether it happens in 20 years, probably unlikely. Whether it happens in 60 years, 70 years, 150 years, what does that matter? But certainly within 100 years, we will not be the same people we are now.
And Ben, let's round off the conversation with this in the future of AI and blockchain, since your focus is AGI. Where do you see?
So I've been looking at the title of this session, AI, blockchain, and mutual dependence. I mean, my own view, it won't surprise anyone to hear me say this, but I mean, my own view is that AI is really the fundamental thing here, and as AI gives rise to artificial general intelligence, I mean, that as I.J. Good said in 1965, the first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention humanity has to make, right? I mean, so once you have AI that's smarter than people, AI will build the immortality pill and the nanobots, and it may even straighten out the medical records situation, right? But I think blockchain is very important. Fundamentally, it's not as deep or complex a matter as AI, but it's a necessary component of the technology stack of the future, because without blockchain or something like it, you don't have a means for decentralized governance and control of what the AI is doing for and with and to people across the planet. So I mean that's a very key part of the software stack. So that's sort of looking at AI is going to be the enabler of everything else, and blockchain is part of what keeps the AI doing something, you know, for the good of everyone, instead of letting it fall under the centralized control of the wrong hands. And in that sense, it's incredibly important. I mean, there are also ways that AI can help blockchain. I mean, particularly in cybersecurity and anomaly detection, and in, you know, fine-tuning consensus mechanisms. But that's also important. But I think it's probably secondary to the role that blockchain plays to enable decentralized control of AI. But then if we got into everything that AGI will enable, we'll be here forever, because it's basically every science fiction technology you've ever heard of.
We could literally speak about this all day, but I do want to leave some questions open for the audience. So can I have that iPad to see if we have anything so far? And if not, then we continue with our own conversation.
I don't see any questions, actually.
Does anybody have any questions they want to ask us right now without the iPad?
There's one.
Yes, at the back. Can you give him guess? Thank you.
May I know what's the development stage of this AGI now? What's the status now? AGI.
Not finished.
Short and sweet.
No, I mean, obviously we don't have a human level AGI at this point. Otherwise, it would be up here on stage instead of us pathetic human biological intelligences. So there's a conference I've organized each year since 2006 on artificial general intelligence, and I would say AIs have greater and greater capability of generalization each year. So look at, say, AlphaZero versus AlphaGo is a small example. AlphaGo learned to play one game. AlphaZero can learn to play any board game. But the fact that we're still not there is clear. Say when DeepMind beat StarCraft, it was still a fairly different architecture, right? And with the humanoid robots we're working at with Hanson Robotics, I mean, last year these robots were mostly using human-coded dialogue rules. This year, they're mostly conversing via things they learned from studying human dialogue rather than using rules that were fed into them. So I think we're seeing step-by-step progress toward general intelligence, but we're certainly not there yet. Now, I would say the leaders of OpenAI, who received $1 billion in funding from Microsoft recently for AGI research specifically, they've publicly said they think we can be at human-level AGI within 5 years. So I think we're in an interesting domain with our massively funded mainstream U.S. tech industry people who are even more optimistic than I am. This is a new thing for me, right? But so I think it's not being viewed as a far-off science fictional dream, but we're not there quite yet either.
Right.
It's going to happen faster than we think.
Awesome. Okay, we actually do have a question on the iPad, and it's pretty straight to the point. So how can AI help blockchain? What is the role of AI in blockchain, and vice versa? How can blockchain help AI, and what is the role of blockchain in AI? This is a hard question 'cause
I
it's very
already
broad.
tried to answer that, so
Yeah,
I'll leave it
our
to someone else.
panel, but like a short, to the point.
I'm not sure I got the convoluted question, but how blockchain is going to help AI is essentially to make sure that the collective intelligence of all these models is actually not under one single entity, but actually shared enough, and there is good amount of cooperation in the process. And that kind of bringing together where 1 + 1 is not 2, but maybe 11, is what is going to happen. And that cooperation is going to be led by a certain kind of decentralized mechanism which needs that layer. And that layer at the minute is blockchain. And I think way underneath that is also this whole access to data. And then on top of that, you need all the applications that people build to actually deploy that AI and to solve real problems.
Yeah, and even for both, there's like trust issues on both sides. So for instance, blockchain can help AI because you have the input, you have the output. What happens in the middle where machine learning takes the time to get your output? Like, we don't know what happens in that middle process called the black box. Well, that's where blockchain can help with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to summarize it really briefly, I think blockchain helps AI by preventing it from falling into centralized control, and AI helps blockchain by helping it be more secure and faster.
Yep.
Amazing. That's our entire panel in like 2 sentences. We have room for one more question.
There's one there.
Back there.
Hi. There was some brief discussion about the role of regulators and government. What can be done right now by people who are running society, running governments, in order to start expediting the process of the adoption of these technologies or preparing society for this change?
So one of the biggest things that's happened to enable the decentralization of information, which is really, really important, is the stupidity of big tech to become political. So nobody talked about breaking up Google or breaking up Facebook until they became just, left-wing arms of the Democratic Party. Now, all of a sudden, whether you're Elizabeth Warren or whether you're Donald Trump, you're saying these guys got to go. And so the breaking up of that centralization is what's going to allow more information to flow in the hands of more people. And so politically speaking, you're going to watch now this surveillance economy come under a much greater scrutiny.
How do you apply this to China, Cole?
All bets are off China. I mean, China, that whole infrastructure and that whole psychology.
How about Russia?
No, I think Russia doesn't have a centralization of information problem. This is so concentrated that you look at places like Google has more data and Facebook has, it's unbelievable how much data they have. If you keep those nodes in the system, China's got to play its way out. That's a whole different, if that ideology wins, we go into a dark age. But I don't think that will happen.
So,
Okay, David, and then Chirdeep, last.
I think that question
points?
is really.
We need to let David.
I got to have the last word.
Yeah.
Okay, he'll have the last word.
It's true.
You're immortal. You
Government
don't
is
need the
the
last
problem.
word.
Regulation is the problem, and that's why we're all here. And I think probably the majority of us agree with that.
And that's our panel.
All
Thank
right.
you for the audience for attending our panel, and have an amazing day.
Thank you so much. Give them a round of applause. All right, we are going to break for lunch now. Just